Starting in the late 7th century and continuing through the 8th and 9th centuries, there occurred a drastic shift in the aesthetics of Tang Chinese women. Specifically, the beauty standards of women changed from idealizing slim, almost childlike figures to favor larger, more shapely women. The typical style of dress also shifted alongside these bodily transformations to favor more flowy and loose-fitting garments. Zhang Yanyuan, an art historian from the Tang Dynasty, remarked that palace ladies of olden times were dainty of finger and small of bosom. This is very different from the voluptuous women that became popular in the later Tang Dynasty. Some believed that Yang Guifei, the beloved consort of Emperor Zhaozong, was responsible for the rise in popularity of more full-figured fashion due to her naturally curvaceous body type. However, there is archaeological evidence that this shift occurred before her introduction to imperial court. The shift to favor women with larger, more rounded, full-figured body types and faces can be seen most clearly through tomb figurines from this time period. The figurine standing female attendant is a good example of where this transformation started. The statue is dated from the late 7th or early 8th century by the Met Museum and is sculpted to depict the woman as with tubular, slim features. Her dress is snug and flat against her body, her sleeves are short, and her head appears almost disproportionately large on top of her dainty frame. Similarly, figurine of a lady also depicts a more slender woman. However, the body does appear to be getting slightly larger, and her robes and sleeves become a little longer and loose-fitting. Moving on to piece of pottery, it is clear that the shoulders and torso have become much broader, the face rounder, and the sleeves draped to completely cover her hands. Finally, woman holding a Pekingese highlights the roundness of the woman's body and face and depicts a similar style of robe as seen in piece of pottery. Through this progression of tomb figurines, one can see the female figure become more plump-faced and full-bodied as idealized feminine beauty changed in real time, and the female silhouette expanded to take up more physical space in life as well as art. The typical dress style also adapted to swathe the rounder body in longer, roomier robes, and the sleeves in fashion draped beyond the woman's fingertips. This is a stark contrast to the more slim-fitting robes and slender physique of early 7th century women, seen if one looks back to standing female attendant, for example. In the later Tang Dynasty, elite women also took to dressing themselves in intricately woven silk. This became an icon of the empire's wealth and excess. In her dissertation from Columbia University, Chen Buyan remarks that women's dress became more ostentatious to match the new aesthetic of feminine beauty. Through art, we can see this astounding change as Tang women broke boundaries and influenced fashion to come.
Women's fashion in the Tang Dynasty was not solely restricted to traditionally feminine clothing only. There are multiple examples where women adopted masculine attire for one reason or another. In this slide, we can see figurines depicting female figures riding horses from the MFA and Met collections. We can assume these figures are female by their facial structures, their hair, and their headdresses. The figures themselves, however, do not appear to correspond to the female body ideals of this time. Rather, they have athletic figures appropriate for riding the horse. The figures are in very good condition, and we can see that they are dressed in green and orange tunics and riding boots, appropriate horse riding attire and identical to their male counterparts. During this time, women were often confined to roles in the domestic household, so one would not expect to find women participating in an outdoor and masculine activity such as horse riding. As seen here, however, this was clearly not always the case. In this slide, we can see a figurine of a female polo player from the MFA collections. We can note a similar hairstyle and horse riding tunic and boots to the other figurines. Although the figure is not in as good condition and the colors have faded, we can assume that it was once a similar hue and that there was once a polo stick in the hands of the player. These pieces were most likely Tang Dynasty tomb figures, sculptures left in tombs of important people to accompany the dead into the afterlife. The original owner of these objects probably enjoyed playing or watching polo themselves. Female polo player tomb figures are extremely rare, but widely exhibited in museums, probably because of their unique commentary on women's roles during this time. Polo was a popular sport among royal and noble families during the Tang Dynasty. It was also a very dangerous sport, and sometimes it was used as a test for a military official's prowess in battle. The existence of these female polo players is striking, and not only does it point to women's athleticism in the sport, but it also points to their rising influence in the government and military as well. Finally, I'd like to talk about Kansheng, a popular theater genre of female actresses depicting male characters. This practice dates back all the way to the mid-Tang Dynasty. It was common for a cast of 2 actors to depict every role, and so female actors would often adopt male attire and vice versa. Female actors would perform many skills such as singing, military roles, and artistic mastery of the martial arts and acrobatics. A character's gender was less expressed through the actor's gender, but rather through the actor's dress and gestures. Although it can be traced back to the Tang Dynasty, the true rise in popularity of Kansheng mostly happened during the Song and Yuan dynasties. This painting depicts actress Zhang Du-sui in the center in male official attire, surrounded by her troupe in various costumes, performing a show in 1324. Although this genre of theater allowed women to express various gender identities on the stage, laws at this time strictly regulated actresses' clothing off the stage and in public life.
Fashion in Tang China also had a lot of influence in East Asia. As we saw earlier, in the later Tang Dynasty, women also dressed themselves in intricately woven silk, showing the empire's wealth. It is known that Japanese kimonos originated from Tang dress. However, it looks very similar to what women wore in the later Tang Dynasty and is also made out of the same fabric. Empress Wu of Tang China was the only female emperor in Chinese history and ruled in the later half of the Tang Dynasty. She was a critical figure in ancient China and had a big impact on social, political, and cultural developments in the Tang Dynasty. Looking back on her rule, many see Wu's actions and mindset as feminist. Empress Wu took many actions that were clearly motivated by proto-feminist aspirations. For example, Wu changed the imperial consort's titles in 662 AD. Wu changed the titles of many offices and officials in the government. These women served the imperial palace as a whole, not just Empress Wu. The change in names transformed the women from the emperor's private companions to bureaucrats in the inner palace. For example, women with the title beauty were now titled recipients of edicts. Women were now seen as working women, not people who existed for the emperor's pleasure. Women now had important and public jobs to work like men in the government. However, most women did not hold meaningful jobs in the government, but this makes the changing of names more significant because there is no practical need for the change, but rather just a strong display of a new view of the role of woman. Another important action Wu took was her participation in the Feng and Shan sacrifices. These rituals had a lot of religious and political symbolism and represented the ruler's receipt of the heavenly mandate. During this ceremony, the emperor announced to heaven the success of his rule and expressed thanks for the blessings of heaven and earth, showing the world the legitimacy of his government. This sacrifice was supposed to take place under extraordinarily positive circumstances and only occurred 7 times in imperial China. In 665, however, Empress Wu participated in this sacrifice. Most importantly, she agreed to the arrangements of the Feng, but did not for the Shan rite. In the Shan sacrifice, high officials previously made the secondary and tertiary offerings, but Wu believed this was inappropriate and said that she should be the one making the offerings with assistance from women with official rank and noble titles. As a result, women played a notable role in the Shan sacrifice, which was unprecedented. The action that Wu took that most promoted the position of women in society was that she lengthened the mourning period for a deceased mother when the father was still alive. Before her rule, the mourning period for this death was 1 year, but the mourning period for the father or mother when the father was dead was 3 years. However, in 675 AD, Empress Wu presented her famous 12 opinions concerning state affairs and changed the mourning period for a mother who predeceased the father from 1 to 3 years. This elevated the status of mothers, and the motivation behind this was to honor women. And some say Wu did this to try to overthrow the principle of a wife's obedience to her husband. Overall, Empress Wu's actions had a big impact on women by improving the public's view of women. Given the evidence, it is very possible that women's increasing social status and gaining of roles in the government like men influenced the fashion previously talked about in this video. Because of Empress Wu, women have a greater role in society, and more opportunities allowed them to express themselves more as they gained respect, which can be seen in the change of Tang clothing. In this portrait of Empress Wu, you can even see that she is portrayed with a round face, broad shoulders, and wearing loose-fitting clothing, showing the changing idealized feminine beauty in contrast to the more slim-fitting robes and slimmer bodies in the early 7th century woman.